Welcome to the Yes in the City show. I'm Naz.
I'm Cammy.
And today we are joined by another amazing guest who's travelled all the way from Glasgow to see us. So founder and CEO for Business for Scotland, Mr. Gordon MacIntyre-Kemp. Welcome, Gordon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for being here. So if I could kick us off then, I'd like to get a sense of your journey to independence, because I feel like it's maybe slightly different to most.
Well, yeah, I was born in Irvine and brought up through primary school in Prestwick. But as a very young lad, I was taken to sort of Newcastle area, a place called Hexham, where my parents bought a hotel. And the Hexham is a very Tory town. Wow. So through my teenage years, it was also the sort of Michael Foot, Margaret Thatcher time as well. And through my teenage years, surrounded by conservatism, I sort of like, that was what I was brought up with, that was my culture. I came back to Scotland to study economics at Heriot University, and started to, for the first time ever, get exposed to nationalist arguments. And of course, I just spent most of my more adult life being told it's a load of rubbish, etc., etc., they can't afford everything, etc. So I thought, okay, fine, I'm going to debunk this. So I started looking into it and thought maybe I could do this as a university project. After 6 weeks, I met with the lecturer in the tutorial, and I said, I've got a bit of a problem with debunking all of this stuff. And I said, I think I might actually be a nationalist. And he said, it took you 6 weeks. So, okay, fair enough. And from that point onwards, I thought, well, if I've been lied to so much, what else do I need to look into? So I started looking into it again and again and again. And just my belief started to grow. Now, I had to leave Scotland. There weren't the opportunities when I graduated, so I ended up in England doing some work in Dubai, Atlanta, etc. And came back to work at Scottish Enterprise, the Scottish Government's economic development arm, in the late 90s, just as the devolution campaign was kicking off, and I was involved in that in the fringes, etc. And by then I was fully committed to independence, and I will be for the rest of my days.
Wow, amazing. So Hexham in the northeast of England, near so is that like near Newcastle and Sunderland?
Hadrian's Wall country. Yeah. I even played hockey for Northumberland.
Yeah, and that used to be conservative country.
Oh, I think it still is, to be quite honest.
Really?
With you. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but it was the last place in England to actually get both Channel 4 and the internet. So wow. you know, even when we had Channel 4, Channel 5 here, you can go to Hexham, you can only get BBC 1, 2 and ITV. But also I believe it's the town in England, or the town in Europe, where more people play musical instruments, because they basically had to entertain themselves. Wow. But yeah, so it was a fairly upmarket country English upbringing. And when I go back, even after a few days, my accent changes to quite broad Northumbrian. It's quite strange. So I am a Northumbrian and a Scot.
Very good. Very good. I just always think that from previous conversations that we've had, that there's that little bit of out of touchness from Westminster and certain parts of England as well. And I just thought the North East is definitely one of those areas. But I think you explained well that Hexham was maybe a little bit of a posher area, maybe, or something like that. Maybe the
Hexham and Corbridge. I think 4 years in a row it's won the best place to live in England.
Oh right, okay, that explains it. So no, that's amazing. So you founded, after all that experience that you had, you founded Business for Scotland in 2011 alongside a group of SMEs that were supporting independence, all thinking the same way. Give us a sense of the role that Business for Scotland played in 2014 and how you feel that role has transformed since then.
Okay, we've got a couple of hours.
Yes.
So, to cut a long story short, I was at the time, because there wasn't Women for Independence, Yes for EU, Pensioners for Independence, Business for Scotland, and Believe in Scotland, etc. There weren't all these groups you could join. If you supported independence, you joined the SNP and you campaigned with the SNP. So I was a member of the SNP, although slightly uncomfortable with some of the sort of policies, etc. I didn't like the Penny for Scotland one, for instance, which turned out to be disastrous anyway. But I stood for City Council in Glasgow for the SNP, in a disaster seat that was like the worst seat in the whole council, and I almost won it, which would have been terrible because I wasn't supposed to win it. Like when they're counting the votes, I'm going, oh no. But those were fun days. And then we got there was the 2011 general election where you could I was watching on television, and one by one the big Labour names started to fall, and it was just quite incredible. So I decided I was going to try and stay up all night and watch the whole thing, because I'd been from 10 o'clock in the morning till 10 at night. I'd been on a polling station, and I'd been running out and grabbing people and bringing them. There was this one family who they were coming back from a camping trip. And we had them as registered voters, and at about 10 to 10 at night I ran down to the house and went, you haven't voted yet, and they were all in their pyjamas, so I crammed them in my car, drove 4 of them that were voting age over to the polls and got them to vote, and we won that seat by 5.
Wow.
So it was hard work. And then eventually I just thought, I'll have a few whiskies and I'll watch the results, and it was all going the right way, but of course I had a few too many whiskies, and so I woke up in the morning, my wife shaking me on the sofa going, you've got a majority, there's going to be a referendum. And so I quickly made a few phone calls, called Jim Maver, the former finance minister for the SNP, and I said, look, there's going to be a referendum. I was a director of the Glasgow Chamber of Commerce. I was running a small business, doing some business turnaround consultancy at the time as well. And I said, I want to do this. I want to start a group called, so therefore it might have been the very first ever Yes group of 2014. I said, I want to start a group called Business People for Independence. And he went, no. We've already got a group that was the campaigning group for devolution in the 90s called Business for Scotland. I went, oh yeah. And he said, we've had a chat about it already, and you're one of the people we said might be able to run this. And I went, great, and that's it. That's how I got a hold of that organisation. And very quickly, things just started to snowball from there. So in 2014, we were completely independent of Yes Scotland. We made the business and economic case. We trained 17 spokespeople, some of whom went on to be SNP MPs, etc. And we put them on television, and they made the economic case again and again and again. We had a big battle with the CBI, and then you may remember the CBI got caught campaigning for no without registering. Right. That was us. We sent a document to the Electoral Commission and said, we're not registering until they register, and there was 80 bullet points, and we said, they're campaigning for no, register them now. So they registered them, forced them to register, and as a result, the CBI's membership all had to resign because it was illegal for a company with a royal charter to be political. And so they started to collapse. We were the biggest spender of all the registered groups on either side on the campaign. I think we spent £148,000 in the last 6 weeks, full page adverts in the papers, all that sort of stuff. And we didn't have a clue what we were doing. We were just running around doing whatever we could, putting adverts here, etc. If I knew then what we knew now, I genuinely think we would have made a huge difference. Although both John Swinney and Alex Salmon came to our events afterwards and said if we hadn't actually been there, the Yes campaign might not even have got into the 40s. And so when you hear that, you think, wow, it was we lost, but we kind of feel we won our individual battle.
The contribution was definitely there.
Yeah. And to sort of like take it, I know it's a long answer, but to take it to the next level, what happened after that is we decided to carry on as Business for Scotland. And as I was touring Yes groups around Scotland, the same thing was said every single time, and that was, there's nobody coordinating, there's no messaging, there's no design, we can't do designs, we can't get leaflets printed, what are we supposed to say? And I said, well, I've got like 5 or 6 staff. We're a big business lobbying and research organisation. We get sponsorship, we get even consultancy contracts, etc. We lobby government. And so we've got some money and resources in a big office. Why don't we take on the role of Yes Scotland? And they all said, yes, let's do that. And as of today, we have 141 affiliate groups, 131 local Yes groups, in different hubs, etc. And we supply them with all the materials, the Scotland the Brief book, leaflets, posters, all these sort of things. It helps get the Yes movement going, giving them the right materials to go out there and have the conversations really undecided. And it's difficult, It's hard work, and we're massively underfunded compared to what we need to really make the big breakthrough, but it's worthwhile.
So 2014, obviously you were really, really involved, and obviously prior to then, and then we mentioned obviously that the result didn't go our way. However, it was quite close.
Yeah.
What's your feeling at the moment? I just feel like that feeling is slowly starting to creep up at the moment. It seems like a similar feeling to 2014. How do you feel in that sense?
I can see things have changed in terms of attitudes within the Yes movement, but we are still a bit in the doldrums a little bit. Without an actual referendum to aim for, or even a general election to actually say, look, this is a de facto, without that being written in black and white, the Yes movement's not going to, people are not going to take to the streets, they're not going to march in the same numbers, they're not going to deliver leaflets, they're not going to man the stalls, etc. So that until we've got an actual proper starting gun fired, we've got some issues there. I would say we could have won in 2014.
Yeah.
The last couple of weeks' handling of the campaign by Yes Scotland and the SNP was awful. Right, it was within our grasp and we didn't duck for the line. I don't know why, but that's another issue. I do think that starting where we started at 27%, getting to 45 is ginormous. People forget how difficult it is to move that many people towards yes. And if we're going to start at roughly 50-50, even if we're at 47, 48% in some polls, etc., and this is why the UK government really does not want us to have a referendum, because they know they'll lose.
Yeah.
Right? They will lose next time. If it's a referendum, there's a route to 60% yes. There really is from here. If it's everybody has to vote for the SNP, it's doable to get 50% plus one. It's doable, right? But what we've also got to do is not just have a de facto referendum in the 24, or it could be January 25 general election. What we've got to do is we've got to have a whole wider grassroots civic movement form around making the case for independence and not saying vote tactically or whatever. So the SNP is no longer, I don't think, it is the vehicle, it's the only vehicle we can use to get independence politically, but it can no longer stand on its own. It needs to reach out right across the Yes movement, and it needs to work with all the sorts of different groups. And as I say, we've got hundreds of groups, but there are other groups that aren't affiliated to ourselves. And we've got to actually get back to that 2014 positive feeling of family. Day afterwards, we can fight amongst ourselves as much as we want, but we've got to get that back, and I think we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think as well, a lot of the sense of, I think what you're feeling is that I think it's building amongst the sort of grassroots level. I think, and that's partly because of the work that groups like Business for Scotland
It's a positive
have done.
feeling.
Yeah, it's almost like we feel now that there's the potential there.
It's
more
real.
than it ever has been before. And there's just that barrier, that Westminster barrier, the
Absolutely.
assassins of hope down there that are stopping us from sort of unleashing that potential. And as soon as there's a way for us to break through that barrier, I feel like all that potential is just going to come
Feels like
out
it's getting closer. We're actually getting. For me, it feels like it's real. It's definitely potential there.
It's sort of building up. It feels like it's pent up, and then it's just waiting to be released through
Absolutely.
a vehicle.
So, just where you mentioned there about voters, I know obviously you guys are not politically affiliated. However, I've heard you being called a polling maestro in the past. So,
did you hear me say that?
no. Other people say about you. But obviously, Business for Scotland has moved into maybe a far more a holistic body. With the creation of, like, let's say, Scotianomics and Believe in Scotland. And obviously the brief. And so what role do you see now? So we talked about 2014. What role do you see them playing now, and perhaps already playing in fostering an environment for voters?
Well, Business for Scotland is the business campaign for independence, but it's also a business network, a highly influential business network. It is the sort of a Scottish focused CBI stroke Chamber of Commerce stroke Federation of Small Business. It exists as that. It's not necessarily a yes organisation. It just happens to support independence. And I think I'd like to see a lot more organisations define themselves as that way. I'm not yes, we're actually support independence though. Believe in Scotland is purely our attempt to sort of light a fire under the Yes movement and give them the opportunities to campaign. creating a Scotland the Brief book. We've now sold over 70,000 copies of the book. And, you know, quite a lot of people say, "Oh, you sold 70,000 copies," and they start adding up. There's £3.50 for the small one, £7.50 for the big one, and then, But actually, most of the books we sell to hubs like this for £1 a book, and then so that you can sell them on and make the profit. Yeah. So actually, we've actually funded the Yes Movement with this book, not ourselves, which sometimes I kick myself for. But no, but that was the whole point of it. We needed a vehicle to actually make the economic case there. So that's one of the things we've done there. And Scotianomics is, think of it as, Scotianomics is our think tank. We had researchers. We've kind of like created this new think tank out of our existing research capabilities. And it gets commissions to actually do research for other people. We do research, we use mainly panel-based to do voter research, etc., on political issues and on economic issues, industrial issues, etc. So think of Scotianomics as a think tank for the Yes Movement. And it's focused very heavily on wellbeing economics, and you can see the difference, the information that we're actually the research we're doing on wellbeing economics and the new column I've got, etc., has made a big difference in terms of influencing SNP policy. They're going in that direction anyway. We're just helping them push in that direction. And even the economy minister now being called the Wellbeing Economy Minister, I mean, that's just, you know, everything we were asking for. So it's really great.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I remember the reception it got at the Independence Convention, the SNP Independence Convention, when you mentioned the fact that it could be worth promoting the wellbeing economy could be worth like 60% in an independence referendum, and I think that's, you know, that sort of attaches a tangibility onto the wellbeing economy, whereas before it maybe seemed a bit a sort of distant being that we couldn't necessarily reach, but now we actually see it as some sort of tool for achieving independence.
I don't see it as a tool for achieving independence so much as the reason we want independence. So if you talk about independence, I've never wanted independence just for the sake of independence. I mean, you could argue, we should make our own decisions here in Scotland because the people closest to the issues should be the ones deciding the crucial issues. Yeah. Fair enough. But that's a kind of like an academic sort of way of looking at it. If you think about why people will actually vote for independence, they've got to have a better vision. And the book Scotland's Futures over there, just behind you, and the Scottish Government's putting out these papers right now, and it says, who will have citizenship, and how many civil servants will there be, and there's a whole group of people within the Yes Movement who are writing reports on, what the size of the desks that civil servants will sit beside. Got to get down to the detail. How much is it going to cost? Where are they going to park the cars, and all that sort of stuff. As far as I'm concerned, no, the reason people are going to vote for independence is because you say, look, do you want to live in the country that we're talking about here? How about we have a fairer, greener, more prosperous, more openly democratic economy that doesn't leave people behind and pays a fair pension? And people go, that's the sort of country I want to be part of. And we say, well, that's why we support independence, because we want to create this country. And they go, oh, why isn't the Yes Movement and the SNP saying this? And, it's because we haven't been sharing this vision. We've been looking at it from a political puzzle point of view, as opposed to just talking from the heart about why we want this. We want a better country, don't you? Yeah.
Better, richer country and better choices for the people. So you mentioned the convention there. I know you were a speaker at the convention as well. How was that experience?
It was interesting. Obviously, we started about an hour late, and Leslie Riddoch had to go before we started, so she got to speak for 15 minutes. And it was like, so it didn't turn out to be at all what we were expecting. But it was interesting. The thing about that is that the SNP and ourselves, as Business for Scotland in particular, we've not had a good relationship. We've never been close, ever. In fact, there's been quite a bit of tension there over the years. But why people think that maybe we are close to the SNP, and that gets said quite a bit, is because we don't go to the press and slag them off. We don't argue with them. When the Sustainable Growth Commission came out, we just looked at it and went, well, this is going to die. But we met with ministers and we explained why we didn't like a lot of it. And eventually it's gone. And then last year, 2021, late 2021, we worked with the SNP. It was the first time we'd done anything with the SNP ever. This is Mike Russell, and when he became president, he was a breath of fresh air. He started to talk again to the Yes Movement. So we did this newspaper, which was a wellbeing economy newspaper distributed to 1 million doors. over the last 3 months of 2021. And what actually happened is that there was nothing else really happening in politics at that time. Independent support went up 5% as we delivered those newspapers. And it just goes to show, if you make the Wellbeing economic case and you actually campaign for independence, if you do that, the polls move. But as far as the SNP now, the new leadership of the SNP, whether people like them or don't like them, whether they think they're going to be good for independence, the only thing I can say about them is that they're engaging like never before. Really? They've reached out to us and they've said, come and talk to us. We've said, well, don't just talk to us, talk to our members, talk at our events. And, we've got cabinet ministers, the independence minister's spoken to our steering group. We're having meetings after meetings, sharing that polling that we're doing, and they're going, this is interesting. They've gone away and done the polling themselves to repeat it and found out that everything we're saying about the Wellbeing economy works. So essentially, we polled 2,000 people in February this year, 48% yes. We then said, if the Scottish Government puts a Wellbeing economic approach at the heart of its case for independence, which involves giving equal weight to economic growth, to health, environmental, fairness and equality outcomes, and also paying a fair pension that means that pensioners don't have to live in poverty, how would you vote? And it's 60%. So it goes 48 to 60%. And you might think, oh yeah, that's quite an easy tick box sort of thing. Yes, I like the sound of that. There's been focus groups who have actually sat people down and said, how do you feel about this? And it has worked through, it works right the way through, it repeats again and again and again, go into the detail of it and it repeats. And the more you tell people about wellbeing economics, the more enthused they get by this vision. So if we go into, say, the next general election, which I think we have to, as a de facto, with a positive vision, telling people how much better Scotland can be with a wellbeing economic approach, and accepting that it's not just the SNP, but there is a civic yes campaign, a grassroots yes campaign, making that actual case, I believe that the SNP will win a significant majority of seats, and I believe that it's within reach to get the majority of votes.
Yeah, that's the key as well, though, isn't it? I think we need both. We need the seats and the number of votes to get that argument through, and I hope we do. So you touched on the communication. You're saying is a lot better than maybe it was in the past.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked about division in the Yes movement in previous episodes. We won't go into it now, but it's nice to hear that that there is feedback that things are changing and we are becoming more unified as we get closer to a more a serious time coming up ahead for us. So it's really refreshing to hear.
I think as well, you've sort of touched upon it. A big thing that was at the heart of the Scottish Government's approach to wellbeing in the past, it still remains there, is this idea of sort of the entrepreneurial state and the idea that the state carries the sort of burden of the risks of a wellbeing economy, the financial burden of it. Would you like to see a bit less state burden, well, a bit less of a burden on the sort of Scottish Government to put forward the case, and more sort of bottom up sort of building the case rather than the top down of them telling us?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's what's happening in terms of the wellbeing economy. Nicola Sturgeon talked about the wellbeing economy, but what she got right was help for young carers, increasing the carers allowance, the baby box. She stood there during COVID, and again, no matter what you think of her as a leader, I look around the world, I don't see other leaders looking as if they cared as much about what was happening to the people as she did.
Yeah, 100%.
She got that side of the equation, but there's two sides of the equation. You can't have a strong economy without a strong society, but you can't have a strong society without a strong economy. And well-being isn't just about carers and young people. Yes, it is. It's not just about society. It's about economy. But what you've got to do is you've got to re-engineer your economy to actually create an economy that works for society. So, for instance, one of our policies, and very quickly, we've got a policy called it's a report we've given to the Scottish Government called the Wellbeing Corporation Tax Credits. And the idea is that you take your corporation tax and you actually increase it by a couple of %. Now, I know I've already lost everybody who's watching who owns a larger business anyway here. But then you say to them, but if you invest a higher percentage of your turnover in research and development, close to market research and development, you get R&D tax credits. If you have equality of pay, you get equality tax credits. if you take young people and put them in training within your company, you're going to get young people tax credits.
So you're encouraging it all, aren't you?
And so basically, if you become a wellbeing corporation, one that actually benefits society, then your corporation tax drops down to way below what it is in England or any other conservative-led country. Because there's no point, they just cut the tax and then they turn it into shareholder bonuses. Whereas we will cut the tax if you increase your contribution to society. And what that does is it takes our benefits bill way down, so it kind of pays for itself whilst growing the economy. But also it has to, and that's the thing, within a well-being economy, economic growth has to have zero environmental impact, right? And that's, you can still grow. And people go, but you still think you can grow the economy, we've got to stop this. And yeah, we do, because you can talk about a post-work economy, a post-capitalism economy. You can talk about what AI and robotics is going to do the jobs and all these sort of things. But there's no such thing as a post-oxygen economy, and that's where we're heading if we continue to pollute the world the way we are, just for the sake of profit. But within a well-being economy, if you're going to invest massively in renewables, in hydrogen technologies and waves technologies, all these sort of things, you're going to grow your economy. But it's going to be good growth. And it's going to take carbon out. You're going to actually outcompete the carbon energy sources, so nobody wants them anymore.
So, Gordon, so I suspect you'll be excited for the Believe in Scotland and Yes in the EU. Yes for EU March that's coming up on the 2nd of September, and I understand you've got the Independence Congress meeting on the 28th of October. So quite a lot happening in terms of you getting involved and Believe in Scotland and getting more involved with we were talking about the voters and stuff like that. So what is next for you? Are these are more the kind of events you're getting involved in now?
September the 2nd, we've got our march and rally. Different parts of the movement have different opinions on the EU. Business for Scotland has always been pro-EU. In fact, we ran the business arm of the Remain campaign and we won that one. So we're getting better at running referendums or helping campaigning in referendums. We won that one in Scotland anyway. And Yes for EU are a group mainly of European citizens who believe that an independent Scotland would benefit from rejoining the EU. So we've got together and so we're saying we're having a march and rally for independence, but it's got this rejoining the EU theme. One of the things I'll say about that, as we were talking about polling before, is that we did a poll of 3,000 people and we found a couple of hundred no to yes switchers from 2014, and then we had secondary questions for them and we said, why have you moved? And like 92% gave us one answer, it was Brexit. Right? And so we asked them another question, which is, if we joined EFTA, how would you be satisfied with that? And it drops off massively. Trying to explain EFTA on the doorstep doesn't really work. It's a credible organisation. It could definitely work for us, but overall the benefits to Scotland and also the political benefits of Scotland with saying we're rejoining the EU are absolutely core to getting a yes vote. I don't think we can get a yes vote without it. So we've got this rally. Yes for EU organised or booked the date because they were hoping for a referendum. And so this was going to be a lead up to the referendum. And then they came to us and said, it's not going to be that easy for us as a small group to do on our own. We said, no, we're talking about doing this as well. So let's get together. And we joined forces to put this event on. We've got the Business for Scotland annual dinner, which every annual dinner we've ever done since 2014 has had the First Minister invited to speak at it. So we've got the First Minister coming along to speak at that.
I was at the one last year. Very nice dinner, and we've got 2 buses going to the march from Dunfermline. I think a couple of buses. I think we've got.
Well, that's good to know because we don't know how many people are going to turn.
It's a few of us coming in anyway.
So Hamza said at his convention speech, he said about making it really big, etc. And we were sort of going, well, we haven't planned for that big,
So I think it's going to be quite a big one.
Well, it could be, but we've got room for 10 to 14,000 people, and that's kind of what we're aiming at. If 20,000 turn up on the day, if 20,000 turn up on the day, we're moving the stage very quickly. We've got agreement with the police and the council that we can do that. Just don't start yet. We're moving the stage. But we just wanted to have a positive pro-EU message, and for it to be a family day out and non-contentious, and we thought we'd do that. And we're going to be doing lots of more events like that. And then we've got the Scottish Independence Congress on the 28th of October. We had a Scottish Independence Congress earlier this year. We had, I think it was 126 yes groups took part, including non-affiliated groups. They phoned up and said, look, we're not affiliated with you, we're never affiliated with you, but we like this, can we come along? I went, yeah. And they said, right, we'll come along as observers. And I'm going, no, you can even have delegates positions. This is not us, it's everyone.
It's everyone, yeah.
And we got ALBA and SNP and Green leadership figures to come and do interviews for that. And so, it was very inclusive. And the idea of that was to actually have an input from the grassroots yes movement to the SNP special conference, which then got canned. So hey, so now we've learned from it. We're doing it after the SNP's conference this time round. So the SNP's conference in October will decide the SNP's route to independence. Are we doing de facto? And if so, what does that mean? What are they going for, etc. Now we have got a recommendation written by. We have a quarterly gathering of leaders of all yes groups. On Zoom, and then we've got 17 regions. Scotland broke down to 17 regions, and then 10 national yes groups are also got representatives on our steering body. And I'm the secretary. I don't run Believe in Scotland. This is kind of a bit of a myth. I get told what to do by this board, if you like, of elected people. We're having an election as well before the end of August. If anyone wants to step up and actually become a member of the National Steering Group of Believe in Scotland, then there's an opportunity to do that. And so our hustings is going to be open to the whole yes movement, and we'll be able to say, well, this is what the SNP have announced, and because they're the dominant political party, what they announced they're going to do matters. And that will then, hopefully, we as a movement could decide how we react to that, how we campaign, what we're going to do, and how we're going to make sure that we get majority of seats for pro-independence MPs and a majority of votes as well, if we can do that. And so I think the October Congress is going to be very important. I see it as the kick-off of the next independence campaign.
Same,
as long as the SNP do their job properly at conference.
Kind of like conference season as well, isn't it? There's a few other big conferences in that month.
But yeah,
so.
at a time when Britain is well and truly broken, it's clear that Business for Scotland, Believe in Scotland, Scotianomics, it's clear that they are giving everyone hope through everything.
Thank you.
No, thank you from us for coming along today as well.
It's been a pleasure.
And all the work that you guys are doing. I see you out and about in all the kind of places that we bump into each other, and yeah, it's just tireless work. I think we're all doing our little bit, but you guys seem to be doing some. So thank you very much, Gordon, for coming along today. We really appreciate your time.
No, thank you, and thank you for your hard work doing a show like this and helping us get the positive message out.
It's a pleasure when we have guests like you.
Exactly.